Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We are coming to you at a moment of absolute critical mass in the world of tennis, a moment that has left the sporting community not just buzzing, but genuinely stunned by the speed and intensity of events unfolding at Melbourne Park. If you thought you understood the trajectory of Philippine tennis history, or believed you knew the limits of a 20-year-old rising star carrying the crushing weight of national expectation, it's time to pause and reconsider. What we are witnessing at the 2026 Australian Open is more than just a tournament. It is a crucible, a firestorm, and at the very center of it all stands Alexandra Eala. The headline everywhere reads "Whole world shocked," and rightly so, though perhaps not for the reason a casual observer might assume. Yes, this is about the heartbreaking roller coaster drama of the singles draw that concluded just hours ago. But more importantly, it is about the immediate, jarring, and frankly terrifying pivot Alexandra Eala must now make. At this very moment, the focus shifts to the women's doubles, where Eala is on a collision course with a legend. Fresh off one of the most emotionally and physically draining matches of her young career, she is stepping back onto the hard courts to face a name that strikes fear into even the most seasoned veterans. The Japanese wall, tactician supreme, and former world number 4 in doubles, Shuko Aoyama. The shock lies in the stakes and the context. Just yesterday, scenes on Court 6 felt like Manila transplanted to Melbourne, with a sea of Philippine flags and a thunderous crowd backing Eala, the world number 49, as she faced American powerhouse Alicia Parks. A flawless 6-0 first set convinced many that history was already being written, but then came the twist, the resurgence of Parks, and the heartbreaking 3-set loss, 0-6, 6-3, 6-2. It was the kind of defeat that can break a player's spirit, a nearly 2-hour physical and emotional ordeal against one of the biggest servers in women's tennis, usually demanding days of recovery. Yet there is no recovery time here. Less than 24 hours later, Eala is scheduled to face Aoyama and her partner. Turning this into more than a match, it is a test of character that borders on the superhuman. Aoyama, a doubles royal with over 20 WTA titles, a Wimbledon semifinal and an Australian Open final to her name, brings decades of experience, surgical net play, and ruthless court craft. At just 20 years old, Eala must wipe the slate clean, forget yesterday's aces and missed chances, and find instant chemistry alongside Brazil's Ingrid Martins against a polished veteran machine. This is the true shock. A matchup that pits youth against experience, raw power against precision, at the most unforgiving moment imaginable. Precision. This is the story of a young woman who had her heart broken on the singles court and now must stand tall and fight for redemption against one of the greatest doubles specialists the Asian continent has ever produced. The world is watching to see whether Alexandra Eala crumbles or conquers, whether she can channel the frustration of the loss to Alicia Parks into a doubles masterclass and find redemption in the team format. To understand the pressure of today's doubles match, we must first understand the trauma of yesterday's singles defeat, which is why this deep dive examines exactly what went wrong, the statistics, the mental state, and the tactical adjustments Eala must make. We will also explore the career of Shuko Aoyama, why she is called the Queen of the Volley, how she reached world number 4, and what makes her partnership with Poland's Magda Linette so dangerous, especially with Linette also being a top 50 singles player. In effect, Eala is facing two elite veterans at once. This is a comprehensive breakdown of a critical 48 hours in Philippine sports history, moving from the ecstasy of the opening set against Parks to the agony of the final error and now the rising tension of the Aoyama clash. This is a story of resilience, of the Australian Open, and of a moment where Eala must prove she belongs not just as a prospect, but as a professional who can take a punch and keep moving forward. To truly grasp the magnitude of the challenge she faces against Aoyama and Linette, we must rewind to Monday, January 19, 2026, on Court 6 at Melbourne Park, where history was already being made. For the first time in the modern era of the Australian Open, the Philippines was represented in the women's main draw singles, and the hype was organic, deafening, and electric, with reports from the ground describing an atmosphere unlike anything Melbourne Park had seen before. The Filipino-Australian community turned Court 6 into a fortress, filling it with flags, chants, and roaring support for every point, making it feel like a home game for Alexandra Eala. The match opened against Alicia Parks, the American renowned for possessing one of the fastest serves in the history of the women's game, a volatile player capable of both breathtaking brilliance and costly errors. In the first set, the shock everyone hoped for became reality as Eala burst out of the gates like a woman possessed. The numbers tell the story: a 6-0 shutout, a bagel that is extraordinarily rare at Grand Slam level, especially against a player of Parks' caliber. Eala read Parks' serve, which can exceed 120 miles per hour, with remarkable clarity, neutralizing the power and using her left-handed forehand to carve sharp angles that steadily frustrated the American. Parks looked lost and increasingly rattled by both the crowd and Eala's relentless consistency. Eala didn't merely win the set, she dismantled her opponent in just 34 minutes, as unforced errors mounted on Parks' side while Eala remained the picture of composure. At that moment, the world wasn't just shocked, it was ready to crown Alexandra Eala as the breakout star of the tournament. But tennis, as always, is a game of shifting momentum. Adjustments are everything in tennis, and this is where the story turns and where the setup for today's doubles match becomes so dramatic. After the opening set shock, Alicia Parks took a bathroom break, reset mentally, and returned as a different player. She abandoned the idea of out-rallying Eala and instead leaned fully into her greatest weapon, the serve. Over the second and third sets, the dynamic shifted violently as Parks began raining down aces 12 in total by the end of the match, but the damage went beyond the scoreboard. The psychological toll of being unable to touch the ball on return began to mount. Eala, so aggressive and commanding in the first set, was suddenly pushed onto the back foot. The crowd tried to lift her, and at times even drew warnings from the umpire, but Parks fed off the hostility, later admitting, "I don't know what my record is with crowds against me, it definitely put a fire in me." The momentum flipped with a 6-3 second set, and in the decider Parks struck early with a break. Eala fought back bravely, saving match points and showing the grit that has defined her rise, but the sheer power proved overwhelming as Parks closed it out 6-2. The aftermath was heartbreaking. Speaking to the press afterward, Eala's voice carried both maturity and unmistakable pain, the sound of a young player already learning how cruel and instructive this level of tennis can be. Her words afterward were heartwarming and honest. She admitted that what made the loss especially hard was knowing how many people were rooting for her. She spoke about compartmentalizing, and that word becomes the key to this entire discussion, because now the story pivots. The tears have to dry, the muscles must recover, and the mind has to clear, because waiting on the other side of the net is a challenge that is stylistically the complete opposite of Alicia Parks, yet perhaps even more dangerous. This is the women's doubles round of 64, with Alexandra Eala partnering Brazil's Ingrid Martins. On paper, it is a strong and sensible pairing. Eala brings youthful, left-handed aggression from the baseline, while Martins, a 29-year-old doubles specialist ranked around 80 in the world, provides experience, composure, and an understanding of doubles geometry. Martins is a WTA title winner who has reached the third round of Wimbledon, making this a legitimate team rather than two singles players dabbling in doubles. But the shock factor of the draw comes from their opponents, Japan's Shuko Aoyama and Poland's Magda Linette. At the center of this narrative stands Aoyama, a player casual fans may overlook but insiders revere. Standing just 5 feet 1 inch in a sport increasingly dominated by towering power hitters, Aoyama defies convention through sheer mastery at the net. A former world number 4 in doubles, an Australian Open finalist, and the owner of 20 WTA doubles titles, she understands these courts, these conditions, and the art of winning in Melbourne better than almost anyone. While Parks overwhelmed Eala with brute force and 129 miles per hour serves, Aoyama presents a different kind of threat, one built on precision, anticipation, and relentless pressure that can dismantle an unprepared opponent just as ruthlessly. Aoyama will not try to overpower Alexandra Eala with forehands the way Alicia Parks did, she will try to dismantle her with geometry. She poaches, intercepts, and moves across the net like a ghost, using her opponent's pace against them. If Eala unloads on a cross-court forehand, Aoyama is the type of player who will already be there, knifing a volley into the open court before Eala can even recover. And Aoyama is only half the problem. Magda Linette brings an entirely different threat as a formidable singles player ranked inside the top 50, capable of trading blows with anyone from the baseline. A former Australian Open singles semi-finalist, Linette loves these courts and adds durability, depth, and calm under pressure to an already dangerous pairing. This is the scenario. Eala walks onto the court less than 24 hours after a devastating physical and emotional singles loss, facing a team that combines elite doubles intelligence in Aoyama with top-tier singles solidity in Linette. That is why the world is shocked. Most young players fade in doubles after a heartbreak like that. They mentally check out and start thinking about the flight home. The shock here is the possibility that Eala flips the script. A win for Eala and Ingrid Martins would be a massive upset, with betting odds and experience heavily favoring Aoyama and Linette. Yet there is a path to victory, and it begins with a left-handed advantage. A lefty-righty combination like Eala and Martins is notoriously difficult to play against, allowing both players to dominate the middle of the court with their forehands and disrupt opponents' serving patterns. Even someone as experienced as Aoyama can struggle when heavy topspin is driven into her body at the net. If Eala can use her left-handed forehand to jam Aoyama and keep the ball out of her preferred strike zone, they have a chance. The second factor is the nothing-to-lose mentality. Yesterday, the pressure was immense, with a nation expecting Eala to win. Today, she is the underdog. No one expects a 20-year-old coming off a painful loss to defeat a former world number 4, and that freedom can be dangerous. Eala comes out swinging, loose, and aggressive. She has a chance to catch the veterans off guard. That possibility is strengthened by the presence of Ingrid Martens, who cannot be overlooked. The Brazilian has faced Shuko Aoyama before and knows her patterns, tendencies, and preferred plays. If Martens takes charge of the strategy, directing where Eala should serve and when to move, they can work together to neutralize Aoyama's suffocating net presence. From a technical standpoint, the key battleground will be the ad court, the left side, where Eala will be returning serve. Aoyama serves with precision rather than power, sliding the ball wide to stretch opponents and set up her poaches. This is where Eala must make a crucial adjustment. Against Alicia Parks, she was pushed back by raw power. Today, against finesse, she must step forward. If Eala allows Aoyama to dictate at the net, the match will slip away quickly, so driving the ball through the middle to take time away from the Japanese legend is essential. Endurance also looms as a decisive factor. The Australian summer is unforgiving, and despite modern heat protocols, court temperatures can still soar. Aoyama is 38, Lynette in her 30s, while Eala is just 20 and Martens 29, giving the younger team a clear physical edge. If they can extend rallies, force Aoyama to work for every overhead, and turn this into a grind, the veteran pairing may begin to crack. Beyond tactics, this match represents a redemption arc for Philippine tennis. After the singles exit, the mood was somber, with social media filled with sympathy and next-time messages. A win here against seeded, elite opposition would reignite the frenzy and keep the Philippine flag flying at Melbourne Park into the second week. Eala herself captured the moment best after her loss, saying, "I just hope the support continues with the losses along with the wins." This match is the test of that sentiment. True fans understand that doubles is not a consolation prize but a discipline of its own, and defeating a former world number 4 is a prized scalp for any player. Picture the scene now. Eala and Martens huddled together, hands covering their mouths as they planned serve placements. Aoyama calm and stoic on the other side, visor pulled low, Lynette bouncing on the baseline as the umpire calls time. The opening games will be critical. Easy holds will restore Ella's confidence, while an early break could summon memories of yesterday's decider. Against Parks, Martens must be the captain, the vocal leader, reminding Eala that yesterday is gone. There is also a quieter subplot at play, ranking points and development. While Ella's singles ranking hovers near the top 50, her doubles resume is still growing, and a deep run here would elevate her profile while sharpening the net skills that feed directly back into her singles game. Facing Aoyama is a masterclass in real time. In 90 minutes against her, Eala can learn more about volleying and court craft than in weeks of practice. The world is shocked because the transition is so abrupt from the heartbreak of the Parks loss to the tactical chessboard of the Aoyama match. Most athletes struggle to make that switch. If Eala steps onto the court with fire in her eyes, a smile on her face, and belief in her game, this moment could define not just her tournament, but her evolution as a professional. If Alexandra Eala steps onto the court pumping her fist and playing with freedom, that alone is a victory of mental fortitude. And if the shock turns into a result, if Eala and Ingrid Martens somehow eliminate Shuko Aoyama and Magda Lynette, it would blow that section of the draw wide open and send a powerful message that Eala is not merely a singles prospect, but a complete tennis player. Such an upset would make front-page news in both Manila and Tokyo. Still, the difficulty cannot be understated. Aoyama does not donate points. She rarely makes unforced errors, which means Eala must be brave enough to take risks, to hit winners, to go down the line when cross-court feels safer, and to throw up the lob when Aoyama crowds the net. That level of tactical discipline is exactly what wavered in the third set against Alicia Parks, and whether Eala can rediscover it today is the question gripping the tennis world. We now stand on the edge of a defining moment. The 2026 Australian Open has already delivered intense drama for Filipino tennis fans, but the script is far from finished. The loss to Parks was painful, a stark reminder of how unforgiving Grand Slam tennis can be, but athletes are not defined by how they fall, only by how they rise. Today, Eala rises across the net from a giant of the game, a woman who was winning titles before Eala ever picked up a racket. The odds are stacked against the Filipino-Brazilian pair, the experience gap is vast, and the emotional fatigue is real, yet this is precisely why we watch. We watch for the shock, the upset, and the moment when youth and hunger collide with pedigree and experience to produce something unforgettable. The singles campaign may be over, but the battle continues, and while the world was shocked by the exit, it may be even more stunned by the redemption. This is the reality of the tour. No rest, no excuses, just the next ball, and the story is still being written.